Good afternoon, everyone. I am excited to be here today with you for the last module in the ETEP online training series, and I appreciate your participation throughout the course. And without further ado, let's dive right in. So, being the attorney that I am, I want to have my disclaimer show up and just letting you know that this course is not sponsored by the EPA. And dive right into the agenda. So what I'm going to first start with is a course summary that is going to do an overview of the ETEP development steps. And then following that, I'm going to do a questions and answer session if you have any. So I figure it's best to kind of go back through the entire course so you can kind of think about whether you have any questions. And then I'll have an opportunity, or there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. Feel free, as I'm talking, going through the course summary, to enter questions into the chat box. If you've entered the questions, you've typed them in, then I will read them and respond to them. If you want to ask your questions through the webinar, then I will just raise your hand and I will actually unmute you if you have that capability. And also, too, feel free, if after the webinar, any time throughout you have questions, you can email them to me and I will address them then. And excuse me, after the question and answer session, I'm going to go through the process of developing an ETEP strategic work plan in Microsoft Word. So it's supposed to say strategic work plan and not strategy work plan. But we focused on the Excel version of the ETEP strategic work plan, and I want to walk through how to populate the Word version template that I prepared. And I also want to provide some information on preparing a narrative document if that's something that you wish to include. I know some tribes do want to include some type of narrative. It's not a requirement, but I do want to kind of offer a template and just kind of walk through some aspects of that. And then I want to go through the process of accessing the course videos and resources. So all of these are going to be available to you for at least a year from when the course started, if not longer. And I want to just walk through that process and show you all that, so just so you're kind of clear and you have video documentation of how to access that. And also I mentioned last module that there were some bonus training videos, and so I want to show you what those are and show you how to access those as well. It's pretty much the same place and the same thing. And then I'm going to do a conclusion and talk about the ETEP, just to reiterate the benefits of an ETEP, and then there will be a post-webinar evaluation, the same as all the other courses as well. So just as a reminder, this is a 60-minute webinar, not a 90-minute webinar, so it's a little shorter than the other ones. It was supposed to be focused on questions and answers, but based on the first question and answer session, which I believe was module 4, there weren't any questions and answers during that time, so I do want to offer some additional content and information to help you in this process. Okay, so I'm going to walk through the ETEP development process, really in a nutshell, step by step. And these steps don't have to be done in this exact order, but I want you to have all this information, and just in a summary fashion. I think it might be easy for you to go back and just kind of make sure it'll help you stay on course when you're in the process of developing your ETEP. So the first step, which we went through in Module 1, was determining the initial scope of your ETEP and strategic plan. So this is the process of considering the geographic area that you want to be covered by the plan, what departments, entities, and activities you want to be addressed by the plan. So do you have other government departments that you want to include? Do you have, if you're an environmental department and your tribe has a natural resources department, do you want to include them? If there are some commercial entities or commercial activities you want to include as well. Also considering the time frame, do you want it to be a 4 or 5 year plan? And just considering what land you want to cover, what jurisdictional boundaries. They don't have to be just tribal lands, they can be non-tribal lands as well, but just kind of preliminarily considering the scope. knowing that you can change this later on. And then you also want to begin identifying, or really start to identify, the stakeholders who you may want to involve in this process. Consider how you'd want to involve them, and selecting your core development team for the whole ETEP process. So who is going to be involved? It may just be yourself. It may be you and some of your staff members, or you may have a committee to work with. So that's going to vary from tribe to tribe, circumstance to circumstance, and you have to balance what's going to be efficient and effective with also getting input and buy-in, not just in the planning development, not just in the development of the plan, but in moving forward, maintaining that support you need to actually implement the plan. Because this really isn't about just developing a plan; it's about achieving goals and objectives in an efficient, effective manner, and usually that requires getting the support of various stakeholders in your community. And then after you've kind of done that initial scoping and set up your team and identify the stakeholders, and you can begin the process of gathering information, which may involve either an informal or formal baseline needs assessment. So you could have a separate document that you go through and you conduct a baseline needs assessment and prepare a baseline needs assessment report, or you can kind of do that informally using some type of intermediate research document. But you've identified those stakeholders, you've identified the scope and the areas, departments, and so you then want to go gather all the documents, information you need. There'll be various documents, probably work plans, strategic plans, resource management plans, data, and then getting information from staff members, stakeholders. So this may be done through interviews, questionnaires, but just to gather the information that you need and organize it as well. So you may have begun to identify some of the priority program areas in the initial scoping process, but at some point you're going to want to finalize those. So selecting which program areas are going to be really make up the scope, the structure of the plan itself, because you're going to want to then separate the goals and objectives by these program areas. So after you've gathered this information and selected those priority program areas, then beginning to identify and select both the long-term goals, which are going to be the ones that are going to be goals that may not be accomplished or achievable within the 4 to 5 year period, but are going to going to drive your plan nonetheless, specific to each area, and then the specific intermediate objectives and milestones, which are really going to be the sub goals that help you make progress toward achieving those long-term goals. And then as you identify and select that information, you either can put that into an intermediate document that then you later put into your ETEP strategic work plan or tribal environmental plan, whatever you want to call it. Or you could actually, as you're doing the research, you could begin to just directly enter this information into these documents as well. But you'll need to spend some time at some point developing the framework of the documents itself. So you can just grab the templates that I've offered and then begin entering the program areas, but just entering that information and deciding what other information you may want to include as well. And you have to also decide whether you want to do this in an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document. And this course itself is focused on doing it using a spreadsheet. I much prefer the spreadsheet because I think it's much more powerful and functional, but I'm going to cover a bit about using the Word document a little later in this module. So I already talked about the process of really inserting that information into your ETEP strategic work plan / tribal environmental plan, and you're going to be entering the program areas. So you'll have selected those. You may have a water program, air program, waste program. You'll want to have a program area that covers administrative and financial and probably miscellaneous activities. You may have a more general education outreach program area, but you'll identify what program areas are appropriate for your tribe, your situation, and then under each program area, fleshing out the goals, the objectives, assigning a year to each objective, assigning roles, which are just simply the tribe or the EPA or both for each objective, and also assigning a capacity indicator number for each objective if applicable. Not all objectives will necessarily have gap guidance capacity indicator numbers, but the EPA does want to see those included as well. And then your plans to manage authorized uh, your plans to manage federal environmental programs, so those statutory uh, federal environmental statutory programs under the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and other environmental statutes. So, this will be included in your plan as specific objectives, but also having a separate area that just uh, indicates whether there are any plans or not. And if there are, then the EPA or whoever's looking at the document will know to go to the objectives themselves to look at to find where those plans are. And then also incorporating the needed assistance, and really the approach here is uh, you could have a separate section that discusses the needed assistance. I recommend including those as objectives. So if you need funding, if you need technical assistance, if you need training, you should just include objectives that pursue that needed assistance focused on a particular area or a specific topic in a given year. And then you can include some optional information as well. You may want to categorize the objectives. You may want to identify the source of the objective. So if it came from a specific work plan, if it's, say, a 2016 objective and you got it from your GAP work plan or your Clean Water Act 106 work plan, so you can identify where you got that from. So if you need additional information, you can quickly and easily go refer to that document. Assigning responsibilities, so primary responsibility and then additional responsibilities as well. You may also choose to add work years for each person who's going to be responsible, each staff member who will be responsible. You could add outputs, deliverables, outcomes, funding. So lots of other things you can incorporate into your ETEP strategic work plan as well. We also went through the process of developing and drafting a strategic plan for your department. This isn't necessary. I guess it's more, it's definitely an optional thing during this process. You don't have to prepare a strategic plan in order to complete your ETEP, but I highly recommend it. This is going to help you clarify and perhaps just identify and determine what the purpose or mission of the department is, along with a vision or what you're really trying to achieve, what you're trying to, what you see happening or what you're striving to accomplish. Also, it's a good opportunity to identify values that are shared amongst at least the staff members of your department, if not other stakeholders as well, and to go through the process of really getting everybody together and considering the goals and objectives too. So this is really a good way to get a lot of good information, get some feedback, get some buy-in and support from all people involved. It's also a SWOT analysis. You may go through and identify the SWOTs, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you may choose to hold strategic planning retreats or meetings where you get everybody together in the same room. And I am working with various tribes. I found this to be particularly helpful because it's actually pretty rare where everybody gets together and gets to see everything that the department is doing and see who's working on what. And it gives everybody an opportunity to kind of come up with ideas, to discuss, opportunities to collaborate. So I just think it's a powerful process that it's worth going through. It'll actually help your ETEP be that much better of a document. Not just that much better of a document, but that much better of a planning and management tool moving forward. And I also even recommend, coming back and doing maybe annual retreats or meetings as well, to get everybody back together in the same room. Another optional activity is preparing a tribal environmental plan narrative documents. So when I first started preparing these, it was just something that I think caught both tribes and the EPA off guard, because everybody's so used to, when they hear plan, they're used to seeing a narrative document, and I was presenting a spreadsheet document instead. Doesn't mean you still can't include that. There may be background information you want to include. You may want to have some discussion about the goals and objectives, but we're going to go through that later in this module today about what that can include and entail, and why you may or may not want to develop one of those. Also, part of the development process is reviewing and finalizing your tribal environmental plan and strategic plan. So this is going to be the process of gathering and incorporating feedback from staff, leaders, and stakeholders. So you're going to take these documents and circulate them or present them. My recommendation is to present them as much as possible, so you can get that direct feedback, have a little bit of a dialogue about these goals and objectives, and um, and then submitting uh, the final TEP to the EPA for review and feedback. You may choose to wait until you have the complete package, or you may choose to just submit the TEP itself, the Tribal Environmental Plan, before you have the rest of it, just so you can get some initial review and feedback on it from the EPA. So you'll also need to review and comment. So the EPA is going to provide a document that describes their priorities, their program priorities, and you'll need to review and comment on that. So you'll return that document, or you'll return your comments, that document with your comments to the EPA. And then the same thing with the inventory of regulated entities. The EPA is going to prepare that and provide that to the tribe, and you will need to review, comment on that if you have any comments, and return that to the EPA. And you may choose to expand the scope of that document as well to include entities that are not covered under covered under federal environmental statutes per se, such as underground septic tanks, or septic tanks or underground storage tanks. Uh, and um, and then there's going to be the process of reviewing and commenting. So the EPA, at least according to Region 9, the EPA is going to be providing a cover letter or memo to the tribes, and then you'll want to be reviewing and providing comments on it. This document itself is going to be the document that indicates the support of both the EPA and senior tribal officials, so senior EPA and tribal officials, and it may or may not need to be signed. So in Region 9, they're stating that's going to be a cover memo prepared by the EPA and return to the EPA with comments, which may or may not have a signature on it, so it's not required to have a signature. This may vary from region to region, may vary from project officer to project officer, so the EPA may actually be requesting that the tribe prepare some sort of cover letter or memo or other document indicating their support as well. So this is something that if you're unclear about this, I would talk to your project officer about what their expectations are, and also know that there's nothing in the gap guidance that requires you to provide a signed document. And then once you have all these other, you have these documents plus your tribal environmental plan, then you can prepare, combine all these together and submit your final ETEP package to the EPA. Okay, so those are the steps for development. Now I'm going to just go through the steps for implementation. So now that you have your ETEP, your full ETEP completed and your ETEP strategic work plan in particular, now you want to utilize that to monitor your progress in achieving the objectives and milestones that are set forth in the plan. You'll want to use this to manage your staff responsibilities and work years. So to the extent that you've populated your documents or have included this within your plan, it can help you manage your staff responsibilities and work years. And even just looking at the objectives will help you at least manage staff responsibilities and monitor progress for each individual and staff member and the department as a whole. So really taking these documents and bringing them into your individual and group staff meetings and having these documents guide your meetings, so that you keep everything on your radar as opposed to focusing on what seems to be the latest and greatest or the most urgent thing that's going on right then. Also you'll be utilizing your plan to communicate the objectives and goals to leaders and stakeholders to gain their support, their buy-in, whether that support is funding or whether you need some resolution or some decisions to be made or some form of support, maybe you need staffing. Another aspect of implementing your ETEP is decision making. So utilizing your ETEP strategic work plan to decide which objectives you want to pursue. So evaluating new and existing objectives and prioritizing them. among the time frame of the work plan. Using it to prepare grant and program work plans and budgets, which we went through last time as well. Um, you also want to be reviewing and updating your ETEP documents, and when you update these will vary from component to component, so I'm kind of referring to each aspect of this as a component. So your ETEP strategic work plan or tribal environmental plan is one component, and this is something where you may be updating this as frequently as monthly or on an ongoing basis to quarterly, but you definitely want to do an annual review and update where you are going to shift the plan forward by a year and archive the past year as well. The strategic plan itself, you'll want to update that at least, I would say, on an annual basis. I mean, really shouldn't, I don't think you want to be updating this on a more frequent basis than that. So this is your mission, vision, values, goals, SWOT analysis. So you may want to, kind of review it and tweak it on an annual basis, and you may want to like do an in-depth review every 4 to 5 years and consider completely overhauling it as well. Although if you actually do a more thorough review on an annual basis, you may not need this kind of 4 to 5 year overhaul. And same thing with the full ETEP itself. So those other documents, you're going to have your inventory of regulated entities, the whatever the EPA's program priorities, whatever that document it is. So the other aspects of the plan itself. If you have a narrative document, if you have a baseline needs assessment that you report that you prepared. You probably aren't going to want to update those annually, but at least every 4 to 5 years, you may actually review them and tweak them annually as well. But I would say you definitely want to do it at least every 4 to 5 years. Okay, so I just went through the whole process of developing and implementing an ETEP. Are there any questions? So I don't see any typed in the box. I don't see any hands raised. So I'm going to assume that there are no questions. So I'm going to just continue with the rest of the module. So feel free to ask those throughout the rest of this module. If something comes up later on, feel free to send me an email as well. All right, so you have the option, I mean, and just really, all this, like the steps that I just went through, the implementation and development, ETEP implementation and development steps, like this is just one, this isn't the only way to develop an ETEP. I think it's a particularly effective way. Use what works for you, so, through this course, you've probably developed a better understanding of what the requirements are for an ETEP, what can be included, how to organize your documents, how to make it more of a forward-thinking plan, more of a plan as opposed to just a snapshot of what's happened, what's happened in the past or what's going on right now. So utilize this in the way that serves you best. I obviously have gone through this in a very comprehensive manner and provided a lot of resources and templates to allow you to prepare these documents. So, but you got to do what works for you as well. I have been advocating utilizing an Excel spreadsheet for your ETEP strategic work plan, but that you may not want to use an Excel spreadsheet for that. So I do want to spend a little more time going through how to create this in a Word document. Okay, so when you're going to create your ETEP strategic work plan in a Word document as opposed to a spreadsheet, my recommendation is that you use a separate document for each priority program area. And so I'm going to show you some examples. Let's pull up the template. There we go. So I showed you this before. This is the template of an ETEP strategic work plan in a Word version. So the template itself, I would say that you create a separate file for each program area. So, in this case, this particular document will be focused on, we're going to run through an example. We'll say climate change. So you would create a separate document for air resources if that's applicable for you. You create another document for water resources, and then for each program area, I recommend creating a separate document. It'll just make it a lot easier to manage. I mean, you can include them all in the same document. If you did that, I'd recommend putting in a linkable table of contents if you know how to do that as well. Otherwise, you're just going to scroll through the document. I just feel like that'll get kind of annoying to do. So I think it just will be easier if you include these in separate documents. And then within the documents themselves, for each priority program area, you'll organize the objectives and intermediate milestones by year. So not just the objectives and intermediate milestones by year, but the goals as well. So, you'll incorporate your priority program, your description of the program area. You'll have your goals for that particular program area, and then you'll have the objectives that fall under this particular program area by year. So that's probably my next point on that is to, organize these by year. And then for each objective that you enter, include the capacity indicator number and also the responsibility or role per objective. So that's, it's optional. I mean, in the ETEP strategic work plan spreadsheet, there is a column for roles. Let me open that up and show you. I put in here a role, whether it's the tribe or the EPA or both. I mean, really, this isn't critical to have because this is the tribal environmental plan, so really the role is the tribes. The EPA is supposed to be defining their role in their own documents, but one thing that I think you can do and can be helpful is if there are EPA roles in the documents. I'm trying to scroll down and find some. So, there are some areas where the EPA and the tribe are supposed to do stuff, or just the EPA. So, preparing the inventory of regulated entities is supposed to be something the EPA does, the initial document. So, if that hasn't been done, you can include that as objective. Annually reviewing the ETEP is supposed to be a joint role that's supposed to be done both by the tribe and the EPA. So, I've just put it here. It's not really necessary. As you can see, most of these things in here, 99% of them are the tribe anyways. So you don't need to call those out specifically. But I think it can be helpful to include the responsibility of the primary staff member who has a responsibility for the objective can be helpful to include in the Word document. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a moment, how to include that. But just so you can keep track of who's supposed to be taking the lead role on this, so you know who to go and ask. And there's ways to kind of use that in more of a management capacity moving forward as well. And staff could prepare separate versions of this document with just their responsibilities. I'm going to show you that in a moment. With this document, you want to update it annually at minimum, just like the Excel version, like anything else. Removing the past year's objectives, either archiving, deleting, or removing them to a later year. And then looking at all the objectives in the next couple years that are already in the plan and making revisions as needed to those, and then adding the objectives for the additional year on the back end of the plan, so that if you had a plan that covered 2016 to 2019, when you update it, for next year, it'll now cover 2017 to 2020. So let me just kind of walk through what this all means. So, what I'm going to do is just to show you, it's really the same exact process for developing the spreadsheet. Most of it applies for developing this. So just to kind of demonstrate that, I'm just going to copy and paste what's in the Excel spreadsheet into here just to show you where it goes. So, on the Excel spreadsheet, we're going to focus on the climate change area. And so I'm going to filter everything out, filter everything else out, just focus on climate. So let's go there. Let's do climate change. Let's go down here and select climate. Where is it? Right here. Climate change. And then let's go down to plans to manage authorized programs. Go to climate change. And so, you'll be preparing a separate one for each document. So the very first one is the description of the priority program area. So it's just a matter of entering, so I'm copying and pasting it from the Excel spreadsheet, which, so the process of populating the Excel spreadsheet is the same process for populating this document. So instead of entering this information into the Excel spreadsheet, you would just enter it into this document. So there's the brief description, same exact thing. The goals, so I'm just going to copy and paste these in straight here, but instead of entering them into the spreadsheet, you would enter them into this document. So I'm just going to make this, right, so you would have just written those here just by bullet points, like there's no need to go into more detail on these things, and then doing the same thing for all the objectives. So in this case, as I mentioned, you need to have the bare minimum elements. So you need to have the objective, and then you need to have the capacity indicator number, which is required by the EPA. The role is kind of inherent in this. This is pretty much primarily the tribe's role. You don't have to include the primary responsibility, but I really recommend it if you want this to be utilized as a staff management tool. Then I think that you should include the staff responsibility for each objective. So I'm just going to delete this, and actually I'm going to delete these guys as well because this will. I'm going to grab the 2016 objectives down here. So, all right, so just want to make sure I'm grabbing the proper information. This also shows you I can easily convert this into a Word document if you want as well. So I'm going to just hide the information that I don't want to see here. So let's see, let's hide this. And then so they're already organized by year. So I'm just going to copy and paste. We need to hide this one as well. Nope. Hide that. We're just going to be copying and pasting for 2016 right now. So if you look at the document, remember we're separating these by year. So let's pull all the 2016 objectives out. Let's go down here. All right, so 2016 objectives. I'm going to paste them in there. I'm just going to get the text out of this and just do a little bit of reformatting. So if you're not if you didn't ever prepare a spreadsheet, you're not going through this specific process, but you're incorporating, or you're adding the same exact information to this document. So, so I just like to go through and reformat these, make these things look a little bit better. So let me just explain. So I would go through and do that for all of them just to kind of reformat. But so you have the objective here. So the first objective is conduct a climate change vulnerability and risk assessment and prepare a report. This is the capacity indicator number associated with that for the gap guidance. And then AQS is air quality specialist. So you know whose responsibility it is, you know who to discuss in terms of just identifying or discussing where you're at with this particular activity. So you would do this for all the objectives, and you do that for 2016, and then you do the same thing for 2017 objectives as well. And so I'm just going to copy and paste these. Oops. Stop doing that. So you would have populated with the same information. I would do it for 2018, 2019, entering the possible activities as well. And then the plans to manage authorized environmental programs. This is just all the way down at the bottom. And for climate change, there are no opportunities to assume delegated authorities, or at least not yet. So I'm going to say not applicable for that. And if the EPA decides that there are some authorities that you can adopt for climate change specifically, then you can say not at this time. But so you populate the document, and then it'll end up looking something like this right here. So I have climate change area, I have the program area, the goals, the objectives and milestones. So formatting wise, do what works for you. I put the capacity indicator numbers and the primary responsible staff member in parentheses at the end of each objective. So you use a dash, do whatever works for you. So I have all the years right here included in here, and possible activities, and then the plans manage the authorized plans to manage EPA regulatory programs. So this is a 3-page document, 2.5 pages really. So this has the full climate change goals and objectives. So you just repeat this process for, going back here. We have, I think, 7 different areas, maybe 8 different areas. So this is going to vary from tribe to tribe. So just select all. So you're going to have 1, 2. So basically for all these different areas, you'd have a separate document. I believe it's 7 different areas. And so you just repeat this process. You develop the ETEP strategic work plan for each one. And then so, you develop that, and then let's go back here. So, and then you want to, to utilize and update it on an ongoing basis. So I talked about how you could have staff members prepare separate versions with just their responsibilities. So, one thing you could do, a couple ways you could use this that could be helpful, is that you could have a separate document that, so in this case, this is covering 2016 to 2019 for climate change. If you want staff members, like, if you want a document that focuses just on the staff members for a given year, what you would just do is you would identify where a staff member is as a primary responsibility, or they're somehow involved, and you just delete the other one. So, in this case, I go down here. Let's say that hypothetically, the air quality specialist is not involved in reporting at all. So you delete that. I would actually just, if you're going to do staff ones, I would just focus on the current year for the staff responsibilities. And then you would go through the other ones as well. So you go through the air resources one, you'd add their responsibilities under air resources, you'd add their responsibilities under water resources, under waste resources. So this particular staff member has all of the objectives they're responsible for in one document. Another thing you can do too is you could actually create a document that covers all areas just for this year. So maybe you would say you put this all in one document, you put climate change here, and these are just, you still need to have a 4 to 5 year document, so you still want that. These are just other ways you could have kind of documents to help you as, like, during meetings and stuff like that. So if you had a staff member specific document, you would then be discussing that document with the staff member during every one-on-one meeting, which I would recommend holding on a monthly basis, or if not a monthly, at least a quarterly basis. And then when you have your group staff meetings, then maybe you have a document that has the responsibilities, all the responsibilities or all the objectives for a particular year. So these are all the 2016. So you just, reformat this and just say 2016. Maybe you just remove this because you don't really need it. You can put all the long-term goals if you want. And then you add air resources, and you add all a series of objectives under air resources. You add all the plans to manage authorized programs. So you could have one centralized document for a given year as well, and use these in your meetings as well. So let's not save that. I don't want to save that either. So there are advantages and disadvantages of using a Word document. So I'd say the primary advantage is probably going to be that it doesn't require you to use Microsoft Excel or spreadsheets, which for many of you, you may really not feel comfortable using spreadsheets. So I would just say that's the primary thing. It's probably going to be easier to develop initially. Going around the first time, you may not be entering quite as much information. You don't have really the ability to enter much more information if you still want a manageable document. It'll definitely be easier to print and share with others. So I've described the process of printing or of converting the Excel document into a printable Word document. Printable and shareable Word document takes a couple steps to do. This is already in a format. One thing though, if you're sharing this with other people, you may want to identify what the acronyms mean for the different staff members, and then also tell them to disregard the capacity indicator numbers. So probably not going to have any idea why there are those letter number combinations at the end of each objective. So the disadvantages are you're going to lose a lot of functionality that the ETEP strategic work plan has. I mean, you saw me right here just easily sorting and filtering things, by staff member, by year, by all sorts of things. So you're not going to have those filtering and sorting options. You can't quickly remove unwanted information from your view. So with the Word document, you can see what you can see, and if you want to see something else, you have to scroll down. You can't focus on similar objectives across years as easily. So this right here, you could say, okay, well, I just want to see, I want to see all the planning activities. Let's see, I've hidden those columns. So let's unhide these guys. So in this case, you might say, okay, I just want to look at all planning activities for not just air, but let's say let's say I want to look at it for water and natural resources. So you can look at all these planning activities for water and natural resources very quickly. You know, in this case, there's only actually 4 objectives, but I can quickly and easily, look at exactly what I want to look at. You don't have that ability in the Word documents. There will need not be an opportunity to add and calculate staff work years. So into the process of incorporating the staff work years. So let's undo these filters. Um, and over here I'd shown you where I've assigned there are staff responsibilities and work years assigned for each objective, and then you can calculate those in pivot table reports. So you're not going to have any ability to do that in a Word document. You can't easily or cleanly add other optional information. So in the spreadsheet itself, there are you could add an infinite number of pieces of information. Oops, I had scroll lock. Uh, you can add additional information to the Word document, but the more information you add to the Word document, like the more cumbersome it's going to be. So in this case, I can add tons of columns to the right, and I don't ever have to look at them. I can hide them. It doesn't make it more cumbersome necessarily. Obviously, it's more work to put in this additional information, so you really only want to include what's going to be useful for you. But you still have a clean looking document. You can easily still look what you want, and you can't really do that with the Word document. And then even though it may take more time to prepare the Excel spreadsheet initially, at least that version, it's probably going to be easier to update it. So the Word version itself, I think, is going to perhaps take more time to an effort to update. So just kind of opening this again, you're going to do your annual updates, and then you're going to say, okay, well, we're now focused from 2016. We're now going to cover 2017, 2020. So now you got to figure out, okay, well, maybe you saved a different version of this document so you can delete these, but then you got to still consider, okay, well, which ones am I going to move forward? We didn't conduct the climate change vulnerability risk assessment this year, so we got to cut that and move that here. You do that for each one, or you just delete it or move it to possible. So you got to copy and paste them and move them elsewhere. Where with the spreadsheet, you have the same thing. Let's see, let's go to climate change on this. Same objective. If you want to move to 2017, you just type in the year. So if you're going to move it, if you want to archive it and have it be in the same document, so you have the ability to actually archive it in the same document. You don't really have that ability in the Word version without making that document too cumbersome. You can pretty easily and quickly do that as well, or just delete it if you want, which is very easy to do. So you don't really have to do cutting and pasting to move it to different years, and it's kind of harder to see everything at once. So if I just want, if I know that activity that I just moved to 2017, the vulnerability and risk assessments planning, well, that's going to have implications for that's going to impact other planning activities under climate change. So let's go back over here. In this case, we've actually put, the planning activities, we can actually filter those out. See, okay, well, we already moved there's planning and then our studying. So let's actually, so we have just climate change. You could go here and just select planning and studying. And then we can see related activities. So we have the vulnerability and risk assessment. We just moved to 2017. Well, this may impact when we can prepare the climate change adaptation plan. If it's going to take us the full year to do this, this was already in 2017, then we need to move that to 2018. And then looking down here, you may have some implementation activities. So let's see, there should be. So develop that. And okay, so implementing you'd have here as well. So as you can see, I can quickly and easily just add implementing. So it's going to have some impacts to climate change adaptation implementation. So since we developed that in 2018, we moved it to 2019. So just a little bit easier to do. It's just going to take you a little more time to update it as well. But and then you delete the 2016, and then you'd go and you'd add the 2020 to the end of the plan. So you consider your possible activities, but before possible, you would add 2020. And then, so you'd have to, like, it's a little more work. It's not quite as easy to do, but still very much doable. Very much doable. So I think that, if the Word document still presents a very good option, especially if you don't want to bother with a spreadsheet. All right, and then you have the option to prepare a narrative document. So as I talked about before, this is optional. I've worked with multiple tribes on just actually doing an Excel-based tribal environmental plan or ETEP strategic work plan, and they've been submitted and approved. So you don't have to have a narrative document. It's going to give you more work to do. As you know, narrative reports and documents can get quite lengthy as well. They do have their value. It can be helpful to have that snapshot. If you are going through the process of preparing a baseline needs assessment, you actually are preparing a lot of the information that you're probably going to include in the narrative document anyways. But so let me just tell you what that looks like. But just realize it's not needed. And another point I want to make too is that I review a lot of plans, and the problem I see with most plans is that they're more of a snapshot. They more describe what's happened than what's actually what they're more focused on the present and the past than they are in the future. So they don't include objectives and goals that what's going to be going on moving forward. They don't help guide a particular organization or staff or even the director or the manager on what where to go. So a lot of plans are lacking that blueprint. They're lacking the steps to what to do moving forward. Who's responsible? When's it going to happen? So obviously, I've kind of swung to the other side of that spectrum where the plan, the ETEP that I developed, is entirely future focused and not really past focused. Doesn't include any past information at all. So really, the most useful part of this plan, it needs to be that future facing portion of it, and that's been the EPA's. Even though project officers have been, initially were asking for narrative documents, they've come around on that. It's just the EPA, at least from headquarters, the whole thing that drove this was that tribes don't have these plans, these goals, these objectives to move forward, and the EPA has no way to monitor and track these. And so it's not just for the EPA though, but it's for the tribe as well, to help the tribe understand where it's going, what it wants to accomplish. So I'm going to pull up a template that you can use for narrative documents. As you can see, I based it on I based it on the template that I use for developing an integrated solid waste management plan, so it's actually very similarly structured. So I'll kind of walk through what each of the components are. It's not populated, you just have a framework, an outline with a table of contents that's linkable. So if you want to have an introduction and purpose, but you want to keep it brief. I mean, in the plans I do, like, one paragraph, two paragraph, to discuss, what is this plan? What is the purpose of the plan itself? You may choose to include community information. So any necessary or desired community information that you want to include in the plan. I don't think that you have to do that. So it may be helpful. It's something you see in plans, so you kind of tend to expect it, but it's not necessary. It's not really necessary for you to have in the plan itself, but you may want to include some history, some geography and location, some type of demographical information. You may want to, let's update this real quick because I've moved some of these. You may want to have some information about the tribe's economy, unemployment, businesses and stuff like that, the tribal governments. So that's what you would include under community information. The overall program administration information, so whatever the current overall administrative structure is for the environmental programs or whatever is covered by the tribal environmental plan itself. So it's fairly self-explanatory. And really the meat, the bulk of this plan is going to focus on the kind of the current and then the future. So there's the current environmental conditions and practices. And under this, so you'll have the current conditions and practices by program area. So just like you've organized the ETEP strategic work plan by program area, I recommend organizing this by program area as well. And for each program area, you're going to want to include um, the current conditions. So if there are specific environmental conditions you want to talk about, if you've done a baseline needs assessment and you've identified what those conditions are, you can describe them briefly here. So all this, I still, I recommend doing it briefly. So the conditions, what are the current management practices that are occurring? Is there any type of implementation going on? Is there some sort of monitoring, some education outreach? So what activities are being done to manage that particular issue under that program area or that program area in general? The responsibilities, so what staff members are involved, what are the responsibilities? If there are any laws or enforcement that are applicable to that particular program area, activities going on, you want to include those. Are there any laws? Are there any enforcement activities? And then also describing what the current costs and funding are that are associated with that particular program area. So as I mentioned, if you do go through the process of conducting a baseline needs assessment, you can obtain a lot of this information from this document. In fact, if you have to do a baseline needs assessment and you plan on preparing a narrative document for your tribal environmental plan, I recommend just having them be the same document. So I think this information, not this information, but this information right here, the current conditions and practices, this is your baseline needs assessment right here. So, just put that here. Don't necessarily prepare a separate document. You can call it a baseline needs assessment if you want as well and embed it within this narrative. So you also want to include your program goals. You'll organize these by program area as well. My recommendation here is you've already developed your goals in your separate document, your TEP or your ETEP strategic plan or your strategic plan. So just copy and paste those, and these are these goals right here. And then you list them by program area. So I would just say, you can just do bullet points if you want. Like you don't have to go into a narrative detail. If you want to, you can have these be in narrative format and go here. If you want, you can include them in narrative format, describe the goals themselves, why the goals have been selected, who selected them. If you choose to, it's completely optional. Let's see, coming back here. So then describing the program management options and strategies. So if you've developed an integrated waste management plan, this may be familiar to you, where you identify which options you have for managing managing waste. And you want to manage these by program area as well. You're going to cover the project conditions, if those are changing. Oh, sorry, this should be projected conditions. So projected changes to conditions, feasible management practice options. So what feasible options, management options do you have to manage that particular resource, including education outreach? Are there going to be changes to responsibilities? Are there going to be changes to laws and enforcement? What funding sources are you going to pursue in the future? Are there going to be cost changes to those things as well? And then really the strategy aspect of it is selecting the option that you're going to choose, or selecting the applicable option. So I'm just going to scroll down here real quick. So I just put this in brackets. Strategy means a description of the selected options with justification. So under here, for each program area, you're going to list a series of options for managing that particular program area, and then you're going to select the options. And there may be series of options addressing different issues as well. And those selected options should align with what's populating here, this plan as the objective. So these documents should be in alignment. The next section is going to be I recommend having a section here that indicates that you have a strategic work plan or some type of action plan, and then referencing that plan. So you may choose to have a different separate document. I recommend having your action plan be in a separate document so it's easier to edit. You don't want to come in and edit a large document like this every single time. So if you have a Word-based version of this, then you would have a separate strategic work plan or action plan for each program area that you just referred to. Uh, and then you can also, I recommend describing what's going to be the process of reviewing and updating each aspect of your ETEP, on what frequency you're going to do so, who's going to be involved in that process, what is that process going to be. So uh, really don't omit the ETEP strategic work plan from this. I mean, I think that this plan itself minus the ETEP strategic work plan is probably what a lot of ETEPs look like. But just having these options and then identifying selecting an option isn't really enough to help you moving forward. Okay, you've identified what you want to do, but when are you going to do it? Who's going to do it? How does that relate to everything else you're planning on doing in a given period of time as well? So how do you balance the resources, the funding, the staffing you have that is able to actually implement that particular objective? So it's critical that your plan includes this strategic work plan. And as I mentioned, like I've been working with tribes on just having the strategic work plan be the entire plan itself. Okay. All right. So a few last things, but I want to just show you how to access the videos and resources, just so you're familiar with how to do that moving forward. Cancel. All right. So this is a copy. So you have access to resources through Vimeo and Google Drive. The webinar recordings have been uploaded to Vimeo. I've been providing links and passwords for those. So I'm going to be sending you a final email. This is a draft of it right here. That's going to include the final course resources and videos in a way that's kind of easier to manage and see. So it's going to provide the password and the links, and then it's going to also describe what's included in each component as well, which hasn't been included in the past, which I know would be useful for you. So I'm going to open Firefox because I'm not logged into Vimeo and Firefox. So what you're going to do to access the videos, you're going to go to the email, the latest email that you have. Please note that I may be changing the passwords and links periodically to these things. So anytime I do, I will send you an email. So when you're accessing these, try to flag the latest one that you have so you have the latest password and the latest links. Okay, so I've copied this particular link. I'm going to put this link into my browser. So when I put it into my browser, it tells me it's a private video and I need to enter the password. So the password is right here. You can easily just copy and paste that into here. And there you have access to the video itself. It'll play. I recognize that guy. So also I mentioned that there are 6 bonus training videos that I recently added as well. So I did not do those during the course. I did those separately for ETEP clients, and I figured that they would be useful for you as well. They're more like step-by-step how-to videos for managing the spreadsheet. And so let me just pull those up for you just to show you what you'll have access to. You'll access those in the same way. So in this document, so I have all the module videos, and then below the module videos, I have the list of the bonus training videos. So there's one on just an like a work plan elements walkthrough, so you know which each aspect of the work plan is. There's a video for managing common objectives, one for updating your ETEP strategic work plan, one for managing staff time and for using pivot tables, another one for converting Word documents and printing, and then filtering, sorting. So some of these things are already included in the module videos, but this is a way for you to easily go to some of these very quickly. And also I didn't include some of this in the training course, so I didn't show you how to use pivot tables during the modules themselves, so you have access to that. So let's see, in here they're all in here as well, so you have the links to those as well. Okay. So here's the list, and there actually is a link embedded in this presentation. So when you access the presentation online, you can click that, and it'll bring you to the Vimeo where that's at. You'll just have to enter the password. The presentation materials and other resources are in the Google Drive folder. So let me show you how to access that. So since that's right up here, so you're going to take this link and you'll copy this. And so I'm going to go back into Firefox because I'm not signed in there. You'll enter this into your browser. Okay, well, that's should be working. Okay, so maybe I have the wrong link for that. Okay, well, I will update that link and make sure that that works. Those resources are there. So let me just show you the resources themselves. So your view will look different than my view. So ETEP online course. And then you'll have something like this. You'll probably get some view like this, and there'll be folders in there. And so there's something that has all the presentations inside of it, the PDFs of the presentations. And there's a series of resources, EPA resources. There are examples. And then there are templates and other resources. So this is going to have most of the information in here. It's got things like the catalog, links, templates, the ETEP Strategic Work Plan template, samples. So all those things are going to be available here. I don't know why the link's not working right now. I've had to change it a few times, so maybe I just didn't update that one, so I apologize. I will make sure that works when I send you the email. And so you can share this information with other staff within your same organizational unit. I ask that you do not share or allow sharing of the videos or materials outside your organization. So if you do share it with your staff members, please make sure that they're clear that they should not be sharing it with anybody else. I ask that you do that just to kind of protect my intellectual property, that I've developed, what I've developed, and so I appreciate that. Oops. All right, so finally, I'm sorry I'm going a little bit over, but I want to just wrap it up with the ETEP benefits. So really, this is one approach to developing an ETEP. I think it is a particularly effective approach. It's been focused less on developing an ETEP. I mean, obviously, we're meeting all the EPA's requirements, and more on helping you develop a powerful strategic planning and management system that's going to help your office manage and implement all of its programs more efficiently and more effectively. So how can you use the least amount of staff time, the least amount of funding to accomplish the highest, best objectives you possibly and goals that you possibly can accomplish. It also helps you keep all major departmental activities in easy view at all times, so you can go back to this document anytime and just what your department is working on. This allows you to set goals and then create and maintain alignment of your efforts with those goals. So it's really pursuing your goals in the most efficient, most effective manner possible. Keeping alignment with everybody. So all of your staff, all the stakeholders, everybody's on the same page. This will allow you to be proactive rather than reactive with respect to issues and opportunities. And so by having everything in front of you, when something comes up, when a new opportunity comes up, you can decide, should we pursue it right now? And we don't need to pursue it right now because if it doesn't need to be pursued right now, you can enter it into this document and have a placeholder there so you can come back to it and always consider it on a future basis. It'll prevent you from chasing funding opportunities that don't necessarily meet your highest needs, and allows you to evaluate the issues, opportunities, and activities in the proper context, in the context of everything else you have going on in your office. So you have lots of other goals and objectives. Just because this new one came up in a meeting doesn't mean that you can and should pursue it. So this will help you easily prepare an optimal grant and program work plan. So I say optimal because a lot of times the grant and program work plans that we are developing tend to be based on last year's work plan. So an optimal one means that it's actually based on what you're going to be doing over the next couple of years. So you don't need to pursue everything next year, and you know that what you're doing next year is going to have a flow into the year after that, into the year after that, and the year after that. So that's really the efficiency of this plan. An ETEP will help you, produced in this manner, will help you protect against setbacks due to turnover. I think it'll help you retain staff. I think this type of planning process, type of document helps increase buy-in and support. People get more excited about this. And also, when you do have turnover, it'll make it an easier transition. So you have these documents prepared. A new air quality specialist comes in, they already know what their responsibilities are because they're spelled out in this document. You can utilize this, you can and should utilize this as a communications tool to gain support from leadership, staff, partners, and stakeholders. So gain support, buy-in, funding, whatever you need to accomplish these objectives. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I want to remind you that this isn't the only way to develop and implement an ETEP, but I think it is perhaps one of the most powerful and effective approaches that you could adopt to do so in developing a strategic planning and management system. And I hope that this course helps you develop an extremely valuable living ETEP and strategic plan that helps your department achieve its goals and objectives for years, decades, and even generations to come. So appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you participating. And thank you very much. Please complete the evaluation after I close out of here. So I don't see any questions, and I really appreciate everybody participating throughout the course. So feel free to stay in touch. I'm going to send some emails, some information afterwards as well. So I'm going to do an overall course follow-up survey. I'll send out the materials to everybody, and I will continue to be in touch. So thank you very much.